Why, hello, my loves, and welcome back to Spook Manor. Are you here for a twisted tale featuring the most treacherous foes of the Deep South? Then join me as we follow a young man who is faced with an unearthly uphill battle. It is a hot and humid summer night in Lakes Wale, Florida, where our story begins. Noah Thomas storms into his bedroom after yet another horrible fight with his mother. His father had unexpectedly lost his life in a car accident on US 27 nearly a year ago, and the tragedy is taking a toll on the small family. At age 16, Noah is a distraught teenager, fighting a deep inner battle with PTSD and grief. As if teenage hormones were not enough to complicate an already difficult issue, his mother is now working 2 jobs, and what little free time she has is devoted to his 7-year-old younger brother, Edward. On a deep level, Noah understood his mother's focus with empathy. She had always been there for him, and he dearly loved his little brother, who clearly has more needs than he does. Yet a mind suffering in despair does not always react rationally. It instead often responds to the unseen battle of heartache going on within. He is a simple teen, facing an invisible war that has no enemies, nothing to run from or fight against, only a sharp pain that no one else can see or feel, just a deep sadness that always follows him. Despite his good heart, the anguish clouded his vision, and his kind, loving mother had become a scapegoat to lash out his frustrations on. She was safe, and though he didn't truly want to hurt her, which his harsh words often did, he knew she would always forgive him. But when the fighting didn't stop the pain, he decided that he would flee. He had stolen a bottle of liquor from his friend's parents' house earlier that day, and felt he had little to lose by sneaking out his window and taking his mother's car as well. He knew the theft and spirits would lead to a world of trouble, but he was at a breaking point, and this was a desperate cry for help. He sped through the dark streets at high speed, a dangerous choice to make on a rainy night in the swamp-filled South. But soon, the emotional toll of his irrational outburst began to wear on him, and he pulled onto J.A. Wiltshire Avenue, near his brother's elementary school. He sat at the bottom of what appeared to be 2 hills, one in front and one behind him. With heavy tears burning his puffy eyes, he stared up at an archway that crossed the road. It held large letters which read, Spook Hill. This caused a short influx of anger. If ghosts were real, then why didn't his dad speak to him from beyond the grave? All of the wishing, hopes, and prayers in the world had not brought his father back, and he questioned how he could possibly believe in anything anymore. Quickly, he fished out the unopened bottle of the devil's drink and ripped it open, taking a deep gulp like it was water. People on TV often make drinking look so easy, but this was his first time, and he immediately realized why they call it firewater. As the harsh liquid tore at the inside of his throat like a wild animal trying to escape, and feeling as though the air had been sucked from his lungs, Noah spit the contents from his mouth across the windshield. Coughing, spitting, and slightly embarrassed at himself, he began another fit. He hit, punched, and kicked at everything around him. Upon accidentally slamming the vehicle into neutral, causing it to jerk hard, Noah stomped on the brake. The movement had momentarily brought him to his senses, but that all changed when a loud voice suddenly boomed out from beneath him. Captain, my friend, remove this man from where my body lay so that I can again rest in peace. In the blink of an eye, a silhouette of what appeared to be a man in pirate costume was standing in front of the headlights below the archway. Noah could not see well enough through the darkness, heavy rain, and spit to spy the man's face. The sight of the ghostly figure was more than enough to strike fear in the hearts of even the bravest of men. When the specter lunged forward to shove the car away, Noah panicked and he took his foot off the brake pedal. The car began to roll backwards as the phantom pushed on the front end and screamed obscenities at Noah. But Noah was doing plenty of screaming himself, though he was crying out of terror rather than anger. The car had rolled back a good ways when suddenly something hit it from underneath with great force and lifted it completely off the ground. The vehicle came crashing back down to the earth, smashing every window as it landed. Noah threw open the door and began to run with all his might, but the scenery had changed. He stumbled and splashed into a swampy, overgrown land that appeared to be nearly untouched by human hands. The rain is falling hard as he stopped to look around. He stands breathing heavy in the thick marsh, desperately searching through the fog, trees, and Spanish moss for his car, or anything recognizable for that matter. The rain is deafening, but it is instantly drowned out by the sound of a massive gator roaring through the waters towards him at high speed from out of nowhere. It was as though he were in a strange dream or nightmare. The world around him was an abstract horror movie swamp. The world seemed to spin or bulge. He would travel great distances in no time, and finally found himself staring at a Native American tribe from centuries ago. They were as abstract as the dream world in which surrounded them. The chief stood tall, towering above the rest with a massive build and great strength. The man's body reflected a warrior, a slayer of beasts, and protector of those he held most dear. The very sight of him chilled Noah to the core, and he stood frozen as he watched the events unfold. A woman cried with baby in arms, begging the chief to stay, pleading that they should instead leave this place and find refuge elsewhere, away from this horrible creature. As the powerful chief stared down at his crying wife and child through the rain, his eyes became soft and filled with gentle compassion. To leave would require taking from their neighbors, risking famine upon both tribes. He refused to impose upon his comrades because he is too afraid to face his own enemies. He told her how he must honor the many lives taken by the beast, the lives of his tribesmen, his brothers, his sisters, fathers, and mothers. He honored them by protecting the land, making the world safer and better for those who are still living. The choice to save his home is the hill that he is willing to die on. Noah's vision suddenly blurred, as though he were grabbed from behind and pulled through a wormhole. He stood again in the deep, swampy water, now watching the chief with torch in hand and spear in the other. Only the sound of rain could be heard as the great warrior watched through the darkness. Just as before, the massive gator barreled through the water like a cannon, and a fierce battle between the man and monster ensued. It was harsh and brutal, unlike anything Noah had ever seen. He could feel the power of the chief's passionate spirit, and that of his own father's strength rise up inside of him. He was ready to help win this war, to help protect his own loved ones, and began running towards the fight, screaming with a warrior's cry. And suddenly, everything went black. Noah finally awoke under a cute little sign beside the road with an adorable little cartoon ghost smiling down at him. He slowly sat up to get a frame of reference. What had just happened? And why does my head hurt? He asked himself while glancing around. His mother's car sat peacefully on the rain-drenched street a few feet away from the Spook Hill arch, perfectly intact, as though nothing had happened. Was it all just a strange dream? He looked back up at the sign and realized he had run straight into it, becoming aware that he had been physically acting out his nightmare. Rubbing his head where the large bump had formed, he stared up at the old road sign. He had passed it so many times while taking his brother to school, and yet this is the first time he ever decided to read it. In a delightfully tourist fashion, it told the lore of a great battle between a Native American chief and a monstrous gator, who is said to haunt this very hill to this day, stating that if you park on the white line below the arch and put your car in neutral, an invisible force will push your vehicle backwards up the hill behind you. But Noah already knew how this road works. There are plenty of hills like this around the world. They're called gravity hills, mystery hills, or magnetic hills. The reality is that they are just an optical illusion, and something science had disproven long ago. But that didn't explain his visions. He quickly grabbed the phone off the front passenger seat and sat researching the legends of this place. It was at this time that he found the lore of the old pirate captain, who had retired here in Lake Wales with his friend and comrade. It is said that the friend was buried where the white line in the road now lies below the arch. They say that when the road was built, the comrade called out to the captain for help to stop people from parking on his grave, and the ghostly captain has apparently been moving vehicles off the dead man's chest ever since. As Noah read the last line, he had a realization. Both stories are about heroes, defying death and making great sacrifices for those they hold most dear. And he realized that he is the warrior chief, the kindly captain, and the gator, his very own grief. Noah went home a new man that night, and he brought the spirit of his father with him, living on through his actions. He no longer uses his anger as a barrier from pain. Rather, he uses it to become a stronger person. Through this new perspective, Noah can now be the son, brother, and protector that he truly wants to be. It is this way of life that is the hill he is willing to die on. Special thanks to Bud White for making a fan recommendation about this urban legend in the comments section. I'm always looking for new ideas and can't wait to hear more from you guys. So tell me, my loves, have you been to Spook Hill in Lakes Wale, Florida? Do you believe it is simply an optical illusion, perhaps underground magnetics, or something more haunting? Please comment down below and like and subscribe for more fictional stories that are often of actual urban legends and sometimes have historical reference. See you next week and have a good night.